In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Jesus needed a break. Over the past several months, he'd kept up a withering schedule of travel, and along the way, he healed the sick, cast out demons, miraculously fed a crowd of thousands, sent his disciples off on their maiden missionary voyage, and fought with the Pharisees and the scribes more than once. After all he had done, Jesus needed some time to simply be. Now, we don't tend to think of Jesus as someone who got tired like we do, but he was just as human as we are. So when we're worn out, it's good to know that Jesus knows how we feel, because he experienced that too. It feels good to be understood, especially in our hard-driving world where sometimes we're made to feel guilty for taking the rest we need. So, Jesus went to Tyre, a city in Gentile territory, a place where maybe not so many people knew who he was. He entered a house, the gospel tells us, and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he did not escape notice. The word had spread from Galilee to all the surrounding country, even making its way into non-Jewish lands. Here was someone like nobody else, a man endowed with extraordinary power, capable of making broken people whole. Jesus inspired hope. He tried to keep people quiet about the works of wonder he performed, but in their excitement, they couldn't stay silent. In their joy, they shared what happened with everyone they met, telling them about what Jesus had done for them. People flocked to him wherever he went, and we can't blame them for reaching out to Jesus. So, in Tyre, he was torn from his short-lived solitude by a Syrophoenician woman desperate for help. Her daughter was possessed by a demon. Her little girl was trapped by an evil presence determined to destroy her. We can hardly imagine how that mother felt. But I'd drive a gas truck through hell for my children. And I imagine that most of you, if not all, would do the exact same thing. That's why Jesus' response to the Syrophoenician woman hits us hard. He called her a dog. Essentially told her that as a Gentile, she was not worthy. He needed to focus on the children of Israel. Apparently, there wasn't enough miraculous power to go around. It's offensive and surprising. Definitely not the Jesus we thought we knew. But then something astounding happened. She didn't say, "Who do you think you are calling me a dog?" Which I expect is what most of us would have said. Instead, she replied, "Okay, so I'm a dog. But even the dogs are allowed to lick up the crumbs that the children drop from the table." She didn't let her pride get in the way because she was focused on her mission. Her desperation and her belief in the power of Jesus led her to convince him to change his mind. The only time in any of the Gospels he does so. Her determination, anchored in the unshakable faith that Jesus could help, caused him to expel the demon from the little girl, sight unseen, for saying that, "You may go. The demon has left your daughter." So now his cover's blown, so he goes to the Decapolis. It's 10 cities kind of clustered together. It's Gentile territory. And the people there brought him a deaf man with a speech impediment and begged Jesus for help. Jesus immediately healed the man, and people went wild. Again, Jesus ordered them to tell no one, but they couldn't help themselves. How do you keep something like that secret? If a gas station was selling premium unleaded for 80 cents a gallon, you would call all your family and all your friends and put it up on social media, wouldn't you? When I was a little boy, I had a speech impediment. My R's and my L's came out as W's. Grandma told me to pick 3 quarts of strawberries. I called it the Elmer Fudd syndrome. It took 2 years of hard work with a speech therapist to fix that, and I'm very grateful to her to this day. But if somebody had untied my tongue in a matter of minutes, you would be sick of hearing about it. Yet we often stay silent about Jesus and how he works in our lives. But why? Are we controlled by that taboo against talking about religion and politics at the dinner table? Are we afraid of being seen as that obnoxious religious nut? Or of getting into an argument with someone who holds a differing view from ours? Maybe we worry we won't be able to hold our own. Or that broaching sensitive topics like faith might damage a relationship. Or, God forbid, we might need to revisit and revise our own ideas in light of something that we learned from someone else. We've all been there. I've done it countless times. 2 hours of polite, stimulating conversation over a nice meal with all topics of real substance safely locked away. Nobody likes to be mocked or deal with a blowhard who thinks the volume of their voice and the coarseness of their speech lends force to their opinions. But in the process of ignoring what matters most, we short-circuit healthy public discourse, and much worse, we do to Jesus what he couldn't manage for himself entire. We hide him away where nobody can find him. The time for keeping the secret is over. Jesus has risen from the dead, the greatest miracle of them all. Of course, how do we even start to talk about that? Some people think they don't know the story well enough, but most people know the story better than they think. How do we insert the topic of our faith into a conversation in a graceful way? Well, there's no grand strategy. And I'm sorry, there's no playbook. And even if there was, that wouldn't be authentic. Giving witness is different for each of us. We've got to feel it out. We need to experiment and learn from what doesn't work and celebrate what does. We need to be less embarrassed and more shameless. The difference between sharing the gospel and keeping it secret is life and death for us and for others. We worry a lot about where are all the people, especially the young people. I hear about that every week here. Why aren't they here? Why don't folks flock to Jesus the way they once did? Could it be that our silence says faith doesn't really matter? It's easy to see how someone could get that impression from our silence. The impression that faith is a nice hobby for people with the time and the inclination for it. But if it were a life-changing experience, people wouldn't be able to stop yapping about it. So, since most folks don't talk about it, then obviously it's no big deal. Contrast that with way back when. Jesus ordered people to keep their mouths shut, but they were on fire. People in Gentile places like Tyre and the Decapolis knew who Jesus was and sought him out, confident that His mercy and power would change their lives in a way that nobody else could. When's the last time we brought someone to Jesus like the friends of the deaf man did? When have we spoken for those who cannot speak for themselves? The deaf man did not ask for healing because he couldn't. His friends came to Jesus and begged on his behalf, because somehow they knew that Jesus came for everybody, even for that Syrophoenician woman whom he initially rejected. Jesus came for everybody, rich and poor, young and old, well-educated and uneducated, sick and healthy, powerful and weak, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, or whatever. Jesus shows no partiality when it comes to the hope of salvation. He came for everybody, of every language and skin color, for the lawful and the unlawful, for the kind and for the cruel. Jesus came for everyone. Yet many people do not know this. Or if they've heard about it, they don't believe it, because it seems too good to be true. There are those who once believed but have fallen away. It's tempting to label them as lazy or preoccupied with the busyness of this world, and for some who have strayed from the faith, that's true. But for many, the church, we, the church, bear responsibility. There are those who have been bruised, squeezed tightly in a very narrow-minded, doctrinaire, controlling expression of the faith that neglected the freedom Christ brings. There are those who have been burned, scorched by constant threats of hellfire and brimstone, that ignored the grace Christ gives. And there are the bored. And the Episcopal Church bears special responsibility for that crowd. The bored, who were exposed to a lukewarm, milquetoast, uninspiring experience of the faith that led them to the logical conclusion, what's the point? To the bruised and the burned and the bored, Jesus sends us. Jesus sends us out to serve as agents of healing and reconciliation. To the bruised, we can offer imagination and liberty. To the burned, we can offer mercy. To the bored, we can offer excitement. And to us, Jesus says, Ephphatha. Ephphatha, be opened. Open hearts, open minds, open ears to listen, open mouths to tell the old story of Jesus and His love. An old story we are called to renew daily with a vibrant and thrilling witness to the goodness of God. In this work, we receive and share peace. In this work, we come closer to Jesus and stir others to reach out to Him. In this, we are blessed with wholeness, and we find true rest, relieved, forgiven, and freed. Shall we stay silent? Or shall we speak? Jesus and the world are waiting for our answer.